And so my love-hate relationship with the films of Terrence Malick continues.
I can't do what I believe is wrong.
Servus Freunde, my name is Jimmy Cage, and of course the term love-hate relationship is slightly exaggerated. I really don't hate any of his works, but I found some of it deeply frustrating. What I wanted to point out is that there are very few filmmakers who made movies that touched me in such a profound way and shattered me to my core, but also other movies that became a total chore for me to get through. Terrence Malick is one of those. His 1998 philosophic take on war, The Thin Red Line, is one of my favorite films of all time, but I have a lot of difficulties to connect to the works of his recent oeuvre. I was puzzled but still on board with The Tree of Life, and I think I have to revisit it sometime in the future. But To the Wonder was such an unsatisfying hollow experience for me, and Knight of Cups seemed to have even less narrative thought behind it and left me really disappointed. It was actually one of the first movies I reviewed on the channel, and taking a look back at that early video is an absolute nightmare for me. But my horrible English reminded me a little bit of the film I reviewed today, but I will come to that later. Anyway, after To the Wonder and Knight of Cups, I had no interest in even watching Song to Song, so that one remains the only feature film of his that I haven't seen. But with his newest one, A Hidden Life, Malick goes back to a time of war and to a more palpable story. It is based on the Austrian Franz Jägerstätter, who refused to fight for the Nazis in World War II, who refused to swear an oath to Adolf Hitler, and who was imprisoned and murdered by the regime. As someone who's deeply interested in all kinds of different subject matters around World War II, and also someone who's directly linked to this darkest, most despicable time in our history, because I'm from Germany and now living in Austria, I was very keen to see Terrence Malick's take on this man's life and struggle and this specific time and place. A Hidden Life is a historical drama, and like Malick's other films, it's visually absorbing from the very first frame onwards. There's no doubt that his films look and feel like no others, and despite what you might think of the film as a whole, there's no doubt about it that it's absolutely breathtakingly beautiful to look at. The film takes us to the beautiful lush green valleys and big cloudy mountains of Austria, to the life on a farm, to the hardship, but mostly to all the wonders that come with it. You could call this nature porn, you could call this corny, but I cannot get around calling this sublime and so beautifully captured on screen, accompanied by the elevated score by James Newton Howard that I had to fight off tearing up multiple times through the beginning because I was that overwhelmed by it. Like I said, Malick is a filmmaker who is able to strike a chord with me like very few else. In the film's most powerful moments I was overwhelmed by its beauty, and sometimes I was overwhelmed by its thematic force as well. I have hoped to experience something similar to The Thin Red Line, where Malick was able to capture so much of the madness of war, the hate, the killing, the despair, to show to what extremes us human beings are capable of, what we are willing to do to one another, what suffering we can inflict on each other. And all of that while the world is still keeps spinning around, while the nature around us doesn't even seem to recognize. In his 9.5-hour-long masterpiece documentary Shoah, Claude Lanzmann shows us a lot of images of nature, the places where the Nazis has committed the most atrocious crimes against humanity. But at the time of the documentary, those were in the past, and many crime scenes were taken back by nature, as if nothing really ever happened there. A Terrence Malick film feels like a quest, like a search for something higher, for some truth about the human existence and life itself. After several extremely loose films, A Hidden Life is the first in a long time that has a clear linear narrative. Yet you can't expect this story to be told in a usual fashion. In Malick movies you won't find that many dialogues or clear-cut scenes and sequences. Instead you get this ongoing stream of images, sounds, music, and mostly voiceover monologues of the people thinking about their place in life and what is right and what is wrong. I guess not only the experience of watching a Malick film feels like a search, the very creation of the movie itself must be like this too. The film was shot in about 8 weeks back in 2016, and then it took almost 3 years to edit it. When you watch the final result, I'm sure most people, especially ones who have some deeper understanding of making movies, will be in awe or just baffled by the question how one is able to edit something like this. Something that seems to be made up by so many different little vignettes, so many different little moments in time. I doubt that there are many scenes that aren't intercut by small fragments from some other time and place, and all of it looks gorgeous. This time the film wasn't shot by longtime collaborator Emanuel Lubezki, but by the German director of cinematography Jörg Widmer, who was already part of the camera crew of Malick's last films. Almost the entire film is lit by mostly natural light. Apparently Malick's dogma was, "The sun is our gaffer." And it really shows. Malick was always a filmmaker with a keen eye for nature's beauty and how to capture it in different facets on film. His second film, Days of Heaven, was shot almost entirely at a so-called magic hour, when sunlight turns magical. But even with all of Hidden Life's technical marvels, the film slowly but surely turned into a very frustrating and tiresome experience as it went along. There's a point when something that's so beautiful can also turn dull, because you can just take it for so long. With 2 hours and 53 minutes, A Hidden Life is Malick's longest film, not counting the extended cut of The Tree of Life. And to be completely honest, I don't think it has any reason to be this long. I would say you could very easily cut off a whole hour or even more, and you might have an astounding, powerful, moving picture on your hand. But as it is, A Hidden Life goes on, and for its content it's just way too long. This is the story of a man who refused to fight for the Nazis, a man who's struggling with the times he's living in. He's heartbroken that his country, that the world fell prey to this much hate, to Adolf Hitler, to inhumanity, and he tries as best as he can to stay out of it, to stay faithful to his beliefs, to be a good husband, a good father, a decent human being. August Diehl plays Franz Jägerstätter and Valerie Pachner portrays his wife Franziska. And their bond, their love, is a definite highlight of the film, and alongside his religious beliefs, the core of it. I really liked how A Hidden Life depicts the life and struggle of this young man, just this one individual most people outside of Austria might never even heard about, and create this somewhat eternal fight against all evil. It really does come across as a time when pure evil was in power and humanity and the world itself were on the brink of total decay, where everything was on the line. That is also a big reason why I find films that deal with World War II so fascinating. But unfortunately, with almost 3 hours of runtime, A Hidden Life isn't really exploring all that much, I felt. In the end, I almost found it to be rather simple and just so stretched out in length. The things it's saying aren't that complex, and all the beautiful imagery fades away to being just that and not much more. The film shows a lot of mob mentality, of almost everybody in their little village getting absorbed by the Nazi ideology. But it's also very repetitive, and because of that, it does come across as overtly dramatic and almost cartoonish at times. There's also a major creative decision that I find rather baffling. I think pretty much the entire cast only consists of German-speaking actors, yet Malick decided to let them all speak in English, some with heavier accents than others. Now, of course, this is a common practice. Most American movies, no matter what country their story takes place in, are in English, and it's the rare exceptions like Mel Gibson's Apocalypto or Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Basterds that do it differently. But A Hidden Life really doesn't strike me as the most commercial movie that depends on the English language. It was quite off-putting to me, especially because there are still some minor German language snippets in the film, when some villagers are talking with each other in the background, for example, or, and this was really kind of annoying, if some Nazi is shouting something hateful in that typical German Nazi shouting type of way. It wouldn't bother me in a different film, it's a stereotype but also very true. But here it clashes with the otherwise completely English parts of the film, because it feels like a very cheap way of contrasting the good English thoughts and the not subtitled German Nazi screams. I don't know, it took me out of the movie each time. So in the end, A Hidden Life had a lot of what I love about Malick, but also a lot of what frustrates me about some of his movies, and With almost 3 hours, I was honestly a bit too happy when it was finally over. So in German I'd say, ein verborgenes Leben ist ein wunderschön anzusehendes, aber doch etwas zu einfaches und repetitives Porträt von Franz Jägerstätter und der unmenschlichen Zeit, in der er lebte. Mal zum Verlieben hinreißend, aber oft auch etwas zum Augenverdrehen. I give a Hidden Life 6 out of 10. It's more like 6.1, but I don't do that.
Whatever you do, I'm with you. Always.
Alright, that's it like always. Comment below and let me know what you think about A Hidden Life. And also let me know what is your favorite film by Terrence Malick. You can hit me up on Twitter, Instagram and Letterboxd simply at @JimmyCage. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give me a thumbs up, share, subscribe, whatever you like. And make sure you hit that bell for all I have to tell.